Hello everyone, and welcome to the Smaller Fish Football Show. We're live in Liberty Hall. That wasn't great. We're live in Liberty Hall. Much better. Right, the reason that we're all here tonight, and the reason that we're all here for free is because of Benetti Menswear. They're one of Ireland's leading menswear brands, and you can go to benetti.ie to see a full range of their clothing. Who here is from Kerry? What about the Dubs? Yeah! The extended panel? Yeah! Okay, more from the extended panel. This game is impossible to call. There's no point in saying anything else. I was just talking to Paul Curran. Anyone that thinks they know what's going to happen on Sunday is a bullshitter because it's such a 50-50 game. Dublin have home advantage, of course. We know that's a slight advantage for Dublin. They have an advantage in water boys as well. We know Pat Gilroy is water boy for Dubs, but is he the water boy or is he the manager? That's what we want to know. Who is running the show in the Dublin setup? Is it Desi or is it Pat? Desi said after the Leinster semi-final against Kildare, Cluxton played his first game. Desi said, "We felt it was time to try Stephen and give him some exposure in game time. If anything happened to David, you could be in trouble, so now is a good time to do it." So Desi, after that game, thought, if anything happens to David O'Hanlon, we'll have Stephen in reserve. David O'Hanlon hasn't even made the 26 since that game. All right, it's time for our first panel. Please give it up for Tomas O'Se and Paul Curran. Tomas O'Se and Paul Curran. Paul, you might know. Who's the boss in there? You know the two boys very well.
Pat.
Poor Desi. I suppose, we're going to talk about the match a little bit more in part two, but I wanted to talk to two of you boys about the match in 2001, Tomas, in Thurles, like the first game and the replay. It's incredible, really, when you think about it, because you grew up probably on Dublin-Kerry stories and rivalries, and then you never really played them.
Yeah, I did. We grew up, I suppose, following the great Kerry team and the battles and the history between the two teams from 75 all the way up, and they had 76, 77, 78, 79, and they had 84 and 85. It was huge. So, but at that time, Kerry came good in 97 again, and there hadn't been a huge clash, but it was fixed for Thurles. 2001 was the first, and I know there was always hype around the Dubs, but when it was Kerry and Dublin in championship, knockout championship, it was always going to be huge, and it was massive. The stadium, the atmosphere, everything. The Dubs travelled, like the game was put back, I think the first day, was it? But it was massive. It was absolutely huge. Everything like Morris's kick at the end of the first game. I don't remember much about the two games, Colm. I was just saying it to Paul there. I don't remember hardly anything of it. I do remember even the preparation beforehand, and we used to come up. There was a house, Inch House. I always remember the name of the house. We came up from Kerry on the day. We met outside the stadium, and it was in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of a field, about a mile in from the road, and you wouldn't have known 3 miles down the road. It was absolute bedlam. And the bus coming into the small town, it's like Killarney, Thurles, but that atmosphere, like nothing beats playing Dublin for atmosphere. The whole build-up, the crack with the banter with the Dubs, everything. And it comes from the history between the two teams and Hefo and Miko and all that thing. It's just there, like the colour, everything.
It doesn't get any bigger than Kerry and Dublin, Paul. And you travelled. It wasn't unusual for you not to be playing in Croke Park. Right now, you'd say an All-Ireland quarter-final in Thurles just sounds weird. But you only played your finals in Croke Park back in those days. Yeah,
we played all our Leinster Championship matches out of Croke Park. My debut was in
proper order
in Newbridge, and replay we played it in every provincial town when I was playing in the 90s, and we brought great colour to those provincial towns. It was great to travel. Dublin players and teams have no issue travelling out of Dublin. It brings a lot to it and takes the pressure off us a little bit, and we enjoyed those times. But I think around the 2000s that changed, and Croke Park wanted Dublin to fill it, and who would knock them for that? But Dublin Kerry games have been brilliant over the years. As Tomas was brought up on them, I was brought up on them as well. I remember my first kind of the 75 or 76 final when I was 7 or 8 years of age. Just brilliant colour, and Croke Park packed, and it was just fantastic watching it.
Was that your only game against Kerry? Or you were gone by 04, weren't you?
Yeah, that was, like Tomas, I didn't play a lot against, that was my first, and I finished the following year, so just two championship matches against Kerry in Thurles.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is, but I think the two teams were going in different directions in the 90s. The 90s was such a competitive decade. I mean, I don't think it'll ever happen again. I think it's 8 different teams won in the 90s, which is extraordinary, really. And, there was the provincial championships were competitive, very competitive. Cork had a good team. It was difficult to come out of Munster. Leinster was hard to come out of. So you had a lot of different provincial championships every year, champions every year, and we just didn't meet until 2001.
Yeah, a weird one. One of the misses of all times happened in that first game. Desi Farrell. We think we're fucking being a bit lousy and poor old Desi here tonight. I really, really like Desi and respect him. We have the footage of this miss. I completely forgot about this.
The all-time.
It's like that old Ronnie Rosenthal miss. Do you remember that one for Liverpool years ago that you remember? They had another one, Collie Moran had an empty net to palm it into as well, Tomas. Do you remember much about the game? Like, I mean, you were looking comfortable, and then the Dubs got a couple of goals, and then you weren't comfortable.
Yeah, I think there was something about that time where we used to start off games and play very well, and then just switch off for a while and allow teams back into it. I think Vinnie Murphy came on both days, and he came on at the right time. He made a huge impact. The crowd rose to Vinnie coming in. But I do remember us in a lot of time, like Paul made a good point. Every year you had Galway coming, you had Armagh coming, you had Meath, you had serious teams all over the country. And we struggled at times during matches to bring it back in. But that match, yeah, I felt we were in control and we lost grip, and we should have possibly been beaten only for the wonder kick at the end. But my memory of the game itself, Colin, is shocking. I can't really remember much of it.
Yeah.
The replay. I remember the build up. The build up was always huge because.
Do you remember this happening in the replay?
Ah, Jesus.
He dived, didn't he?
I remember it. It was terrible timing. I remember that.
What were you trying to do?
I remember my first instinct was, Jesus, if I pretend I'm hurt here, I might get some bit of sympathy. So I stayed down. I remember Curran Whelan dragged me up and started roaring into my face, and then I jumped up and reacted at him. I couldn't actually see the colour of the card when McEnany left it, but I do remember years after I was inside, not years after, very soon after that we played a league game above in Dublin, and we were socialising the same night. I think we were inside in Coppers the same night, and Darren Homan and Wheelo were fucking boozed, and they pinned me, and they were coming over, and I was looking up at the two of them, and they had an issue with that tackle, yeah.
Well, if Homan was there, I'd be saying, sorry.
After the game, Kerry had won, at the replay, and obviously I was suspended. And that time it was strange, like when you compare it to nowadays, all the media were allowed into the dressing room. So you'd be togging off and balls naked around the dressing room, and 8 or 9 fellas would come down and you'd be dressing and they'd sit down beside you and they'd start whatever. Well, Paulie was over in the corner and he called me over and he says, go in and lock the door inside the toilet and stay inside there for 10 minutes. He says, we'll clear me. I wasn't going to go talking to any media, but yeah, I remember that all right.
Back then,
in fairness, Wooly, I think he was been fair on Dublin now. I think you were 6 or 7 points up at that stage. I think he felt sorry for us. 2 games were actually very similar. Kerry were blowing us out of the water in the first half, and Dublin somehow managed to get back in. Vinnie Murphy got a great goal to kick-start it, and then Holman got a fisted goal near the end, which put us a point ahead. And I remember shortly after that, in injury time, Johnny Crowley missed a very easy point to equalise it. And it was actually Davy Byrne who was in goal at the time, skewed his shot out over the line and led to Morris's point. So, but I think it was the 2 games were great. They were great to be involved in. Look, we didn't get the result we wanted, but Thurles was such an iconic venue. Like we stayed in the Horse and Jockey a couple of times before the match, and remember driving into the square and just a sea of colour. It was unbelievable. It was brilliant to get out now. Great for players, great atmosphere, and I'm not sure what song we had singing on the bus. I think it was Boney M or something like that to try and get us going. But it was great stuff now.
Yeah, it definitely was. That tackle was kind of like, I'm sick of that Collymore and bursting down the middle, and I'm going to do something about it.
I don't know what was going through my head at the time. I couldn't leave him in, I suppose, you know. In fairness, Fitzmaurice was coming. I should have left Fitzmaurice because he would have done it as well, I'd say, to be fair. But it was like we were talking about it before in terms of there was space that time. Your man was your man, and you were very often left on your own. The full back line that time, Seamus will say it, there was so much space inside. If you had half-backs gallivanting, there was no sweepers, there was no compact, there was no half-hours coming back, so you were on your own. So it was a case that if Collymore had a huge game now, it'd be me that'd be freaking dealing with it, do you know what I mean? You won't, if a forward has a great game now, they don't really look as much at the player that's marking him, they'd look at the defence as a unit.
Yeah.
Whereas back then it was so...
Definitely not half forwards. If a half forward gets a few scores, it's no one's fault. It's the whole lot's fault. It's the whole fault. It must be fantastic to be a wing back now.
Do you know the other interesting thing about the game? I was just talking to Tomas beforehand. In the 2 games, I don't know how many kickouts there were from the two keepers. How many went short, Wooly? Have a guess.
0.
0. Not one. Straight into the middle. Battle in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, the game has changed so much over the last 20 years. It's gone very tactical. Look, I still think the best teams and the best players rise to the top, and I think that's what we're looking at for Sunday's final. The 2 best teams in the country are playing because they have the best players, and that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, it's a lack of contests is what a lot of people have the problem with, you know, and even Kerry have gone away from pressing that kick out, and I'd say on Sunday you'll see both teams giving up a lot of kickouts. And I don't like that, you know, because you're losing contests by doing that. It's just cheap possession. You mentioned the Morris Fitzgerald. I'm not going to show the Morris Fitzgerald score because everybody's seen that 100 times. Tommy Carr giving him a bit of lip. I want to play Morris Fitzgerald's welcome when he came onto the field. He got a nice welcome from the Dubs. Tony Davis had just attacked him when he came on the field.
He was lucky there. Wooly J.O. was moving in as well.
I saw Johnny McGee talking recently saying that was a mistake. That angered Morris. But would Morris be a bit like Clifford? I know that's said about Clifford. Don't be angering him. Would Morris would have been a bit more gentle than that, would he, Tomas?
Morris is an icon down in Kerry and an unbelievable player and the best 2-footed player I've seen. You know, if you were inside in training and Morris got on the ball, Jesus, you'd have to be really, really tight because he'd put it. But there was that time we used to play Armagh a lot in challenge games. Morris was tough because McGeaney always tells a story that he marked Morris in one of these games, and Morris would be tough out. Morris would mix it with the best of fellas, and McGeaney laid into him, absolutely laid into him. And after about 4 or 5 minutes of him constantly had 3 or 4 plays, 3 or 4 kickouts, he kept coming in, kept talking to him, and Morris turned around to him and says, keep doing it, keep at that, because Paddy actually thinks I'm soft. Keep going. You'll build me up with Paddy here. Good man, Kieran, keep it going, boy, keep it going. You'd mess with your head. He was an unbelievable player, and it didn't surprise me. It is, in all sport, I'll always say to this day, the greatest kick I like when you take into context the fact that we were a point down rather than a winning score or anything like that. We were a point down. If he missed it, we were out.
It would have been disallowed in today's rules.
Because he
He
came
was
over
in
the
on the
sideline.
fucking.
He borrowed a few yards.
Yeah. He was unbelievable. He was class.
Yeah. It's a funny time around the Dubs then, Paul, because you were on the slide in little ways, and you had a few good players coming through, Pader Andrews, Johnny Mingy. Now, they weren't like the 2011 minors, for example, you know, like incredible players, but there were some good young lads, and you were Tommy Carr, I suppose, was trying to manage phasing some of the older lads out. So it felt like a kind of disorganised Dublin around the time.
I know we just hadn't the players. Only simple as that. We had to wait another 10 years before we actually won an All Ireland, and a lot of work to do that. But as you said, there was a lot of great players that played with Dublin around that barren period. But we just didn't click. We just didn't have enough good players, and it just didn't happen. There were too many better teams out there.
Yeah, there were a lot of good teams around the time. I'm thinking about Paddy and Morris, and Paddy was ahead of his time with Morris. Now, I wouldn't have agreed with the decision at the time, like, what are Kerry doing? But Paddy that was never done. You know, that you'd keep a lad that's really good in reserve to bring him on.
Yeah, I remember there was an awful lot of talk around that, and there still would be in terms of like Morris holds a certain, I suppose, star in Kerry, and rightly so. He was there, I suppose, in the years that Kerry didn't have an awful lot of success, but he was still getting 12, 13 points a game off the ground from play, everything. And he was such an integral part of 97. I was sitting on the bench when Kerry won it in 97, and I never saw a performance. I don't know how Mayo left one man on him for the day. To this day, I can't understand it. But in that year, I think a big factor was it, and they wouldn't have seen it from the outside, Morris didn't do an awful lot of training because of injuries, and he was going from match to match. But every single game he came in, I remember the Armagh in 2000, where he was coming off the bench and getting the goal he got off his left into the hill. It was phenomenal. Like, he was carrying us over the line. There was no way possibly that he would have lasted a full match.
All right, so it
the
was
decision
right.
I'd imagine that was it. I remember Paddy wouldn't discuss stuff like that with us, even though we'd be talking to him every single day. He'd never ever discuss what was happening in the background in terms of selections or in terms of who was going well or asking us about players. He wasn't into that, but that like we saw it. If Morris trained hard, Morris couldn't train like the rest of us. You know, he was a big man, years of training, and I'd say he had issues with injuries. And that year, if my memory serves me correct, there was a lot of in-between stuff, you know.
Right.
Because John O'Keefe was in charge of us. We were talking about some of the training like that you do was violent. It was you and I said it to Paul, like, the only enjoyment, and I'd actually start laughing in the middle of it, was look at somebody else beside you who's struggling worse. Normally, Darrow Canada would be a good guy to look at. At the end of a hard run, Darrow would come up to you after training. I don't see the point of it. Like, if you put a ball in front of me, I'd go gladly. You know, we're running around in circles. Like.
You'd have ed up the laps, I'd say, Paul, because it was laps back then. That was the training.
Oh, jeez, it was violent stuff. Yeah, it was mad. It really was. Everything has changed. Like, it's all body fat weight now, and you know, eating the proper stuff, and you know, they're all doing the right stuff. Even at club level. Club level has changed out of all proportions. You know, club level is now where inter-county was 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's where it is. You know, and if you have lucky enough, if you're a club that has the finances, then it's an inter-county setup because they have the backroom team and they have the medical stuff and they have all that going on. But that's what all the club stuff, players and managers are striving. And look, I don't know where the real fun is anymore. In particularly in the club stuff, you know, they're expected to train hard, they're expected to be very fit, and I think the only enjoyment that I see is actually winning something, and winning isn't for everyone. You can't win all the time. To just like the young lads now, they just seem to be very driven or serious. I don't know what it is. Like I said to Tomas before we started, I'm glad I played football when I did, because like we trained like animals, but you know, we enjoyed it. We had a great crack after, and we drank a few pints and all that sort of thing. But you know, it's changed completely, the game.
Yeah.
Totally.
You were a bit of a drill sergeant with Ballymun Kickham's now, I heard.
Who told you that?
You had them training on the Sunday night after Dublin matches, so they couldn't have a few pints.
I don't remember. That's 10 years ago. I don't remember that.
I wonder what you'd be like now.
I know the Ballymun boys were great. You know, they're tough boys. They don't play hurling in Ballymun, so it's football. They're all very technically good footballers, because they
that was
spend
a great
lot of
team
time.
you were over, wasn't
But
it?
they're great players on it. You know, we were unlucky in an All-Ireland final, but they're hardy boys in Ballymun. You know, they do what you ask, and that was a particularly good team.
You're the right one to talk about James McCarthy then. He's played in 10 All-Ireland finals, won 8 through 2. Like, is there anyone in the country that doesn't like James McCarthy or doesn't respect James? You know, there's certain lads you'd be like, he's a bollocks, whatever. Yeah. There's no one says that about him.
Yeah, I just looked at his interview, the pre-final interview there. I think it was done last week. You know, the way they do it now, a week before the final. But his interview was just like it was his first final. And it's unbelievable. He's just such a modest young fella. I think that's the best word I can describe James, modest. But then you add in what else he has. Like, he's pure athletic, tough, teak, brave, and just the ultimate team player. And, you know, he's had some career, and I think it'd be emotional for a lot of people in Dublin if him in particular would win his 9th medal on Sunday. Tough ask, but look, he'll treat this as the first final. That's the greatness of James McCarthy over the years. Even though he's so many medals, he's still the same James McCarthy that I coached 10 years ago at Ballymun.
Yeah, and he's an animal to train to. I hear he's at the front of the runs even at his age. Like, there's no end in sight for him if he wanted to.
I think James could go on for another 2 or 3 years. Yeah, the big thing when you get into your 30s is injuries. You know, the injuries hamper you. They slow your progress. They slow your ability to train. So, you know, if he stays injury free, he could certainly go another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and he'll break the Kerry record. All the Kerry boys on 8 All-Irelands. Tomas, how much would that piss you off?
Well, he will if they win. If they win, he will. I don't know. Like, that Kerry team would always be the heroes to us. The great Kerry team, Miko's team. You know, it was one group that just went on for years and years. You know, the same lads. But
a bit like the Limerick hurlers, actually. Dublin have changed, but Dublin's dominance has been over probably a longer period, has it?
Yeah, but they've had unbelievable players during that period. Like, Cluxon is going for it. Mick Fitz, who I suppose wouldn't get the same plaudits that McCarthy. Well, he probably does within Dublin, but outside of Dublin, the 3 of those players, if you look at them, Cluxon is still at the top of his game. Mick Fitz is probably going to get the job of marking Clifford, and then McCarthy is driving the whole thing. And the hunger is and the drive. You know, it'd be very easy for them to walk away, but I just get the feeling that the Dubs possibly, you always try to grab on to certain things, you know, to motivate you going forward and all that. And I've heard it in Kerry, like, there would be a motivation to say, if you got beat on Sunday, it would be a double blow to have lads on 9 and the famous 5 below in Kerry.
Would records like that that would annoy Kerry, because Kerry are a very confident county and they like having, you've the most All-Irelands, you've the most All-Ireland winners. Like, for that to be broken.
I don't know. Look, it's broken in terms of they've broken every record. The Dubs have broken every record that's there. You've had 6 in a row, so I think that would be a less of an issue. There's what I love about Kerry. There'll always be tradition in Kerry, and the tradition will always stand. You know, I was listening to a thing coming up in the car there today and reading the Gaeltacht, and they were talking about Civil War and the 2 sides, and it was football. You know, fellas actually in the middle of it, fighting each other, they give your man permission to come in and play the game and then go off and give him 2 hours. In the middle of a civil war, football is everything down there. So tradition is what will keep driving it forward anyway, no matter what record. So, you know, if the Dubs win on Sunday, best of luck to them, but I don't think they will.
You were going to come in there,
No,
Paul?
I wouldn't.
What did you say at the start of the show? Bullshitters.
No, but it is true. It is true, Paul. We'll get your predictions on the game, lads, because we're going to talk about the game a bit more on the second panel. Who do you think's going to win, Paul? We were talking before. It's so hard.
Yeah. Come here. I woke up Monday, I thought
What are you
Dublin.
worried about outside
I
of
woke up
Clifford?
Tuesday, I thought Kerry. Wednesday was Dublin. That's the way it is. You know, Kerry are even money favourites to do back-to-back. I personally think that Kerry have more motivation for this one. You know, just what you mentioned there about the, you know, stopping Dublin, winning another one is huge motivation, but also just backing up last year's result, you know, winning another title, going into 2024 with a chance of winning a 3 in a row, which is probably unheard of 5-6 years ago when Dublin were in their pomp, and here they have a chance then. So I just think they have a massive motivation. Look, I think the 2 full back lines can be got at. I think the game will be physical early. I don't think there'll be any standing off. I think you could turn off the telly probably until the last 20 minutes and watch it happen then. So I think it'll all happen in the last 20 minutes. Dublin have probably a better bench. Stephen O'Brien is picked in the team, which probably lessens their bench options, their, you know, that impact option that Stephen gives. Dublin have good lads to come in, so look, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But I'd be hoping Dublin win, but I don't know. I think it's going to be very close.
What do you think, Tomas?
Yeah, I have a buddy, and I'd ring him most weeks, and geez, he's a dour man, and I had to tell him to get off the phone. No, he was there telling me, like, and when you put it in one way, you say, "Jeez, we've lost David Moore, and jeez, they're after they've con this year." And they lost Small for a while. He got a black card last year, and they have Jack Mack back, and they have Cluxton back, and they have Mannion back. And I said, Jesus Christ, will we go up at all? But then I think last year was huge for that Kerry team to get over the line. And like everybody would say that David Clifford is one man and he's an outstanding footballer. He's absolutely been brilliant and he's dragged them through some tough games. But there are other lads. Jim O'Connor has had a serious year. Gavin White is back to form. Shawnee Shea is coming good. There are 3 or 4 maybe that possibly have to lift their game. But you know, there'll be motivation for them. Tom Sullivan, I suppose, last year coming into the All-Ireland, for example, would have been seen as a nail-on All-Star, and he got Shane Walsh pulled a match from heaven out of him. So there'll be different challenges. I agree with Paul. I think early on there's going to be battles all over the pitch. The kickouts will be the thing. I don't think they'll go as aggressive, and I think they'll have to mix it up. I think they'll have to go more often. Like they won the game against Derry because they pressed.
And Dublin did against Monaghan, and yet they don't do it that often.
Yeah, it's probably impossible to do it all the time. So you can get periods during the game where you can go after it. But what I did think, if you don't go after the kick-out, then Kerry invited Derry onto them an awful lot, and I know they were a man down and Derry did serious damage to that. But grand if you're sitting off the kick-outs, but yes, meet them at halfway and make sure it's harder for them to come inside your half. And I don't think that was happening either at times for Kerry the last day. So the one thing the Dubs are absolutely outstanding at, if you ever watch them, is one-on-one battles all over the field. They can track and they can cover. They trust themselves not to defend as a unit. They trust themselves individually. And I do think there'll be huge matchups. All like Con will be like...
Who'll pick Con there quickly? Thomas Sullivan?
No, I think Jason Foley will pick up Con, I would say.
But
if Con plays inside. You see, this will be my argument. I think that Dublin will play either Bugler or Kilkenny and put them out. If I think... I don't know, I'd be happier as a Dub if Kilkenny was on the 40 and you could leave Con closer to goal, because as a Kerry defender you'd be happier to see Con wandering out the pitch. I know they have danger everywhere, but if Kilkenny starts, I think Kilkenny has a history with this Kerry team. I think it would rattle him. I think Kerry would have to have a plan for him. And Bugler has been outstanding for Dublin throughout the championship. Not only is he a guy who can do the modern stuff of tracking back and working hard, but he'll also tag a scorer too. I think he was a loss for Dublin in the semi-final. So I think Dublin have more form at the moment, especially in the forward line. But if Kerry can get, always in our Ireland final days, Colm, somebody comes, and it could be a day Paul Ganey fucking shoots the lights out. It could be one of those days. It could be the same on the Dublin side. Like Fenton is coming good at the right time. The ingredients are there for a cracker. I think it'll probably be, everybody's saying I think there'll be intensity all over the pitch. It might be cagey at the start, but it'll come down to the last 10 minutes. Like.
Yeah.
But I do, like, I'd be when it really matters, I think it'll be very, very hard to call. Obviously, I'd hope Kerry would win. I think if they do click, that they have the ability to do it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's it for part one. Give a big round of applause for Tomas O'Se and Paul Curran. Welcome back to the Smaller Fish Football Show. We're live in Liberty Hall. You ready for our second panel? Yeah. All right, please give it up for Seamus Moynihan, Mark Vaughan and Paul Clarke. Seamus Moynihan, Mark Vaughan and Paul Clarke. Taking you guys a bit of time to get up those stairs there. Grab a mic there.
We're getting old, Colm.
Come here, I want to start off here, lads, anyways, because we want to talk about the match in this section. And first of all, Mark, I'll start with you. Do we believe this Dublin team?
I think the best two teams are in the final. For me, probably a controversial one. I probably think Kerry are the better team. I think Dublin have a better system. They've played to this system for years. I think footballing wise, if I was to take out, the two best players on the pitch, I would say Sean O'Shea and I would say Clifford, right? And I think coming all on fine, I think the only thing you can really put down there is you can chalk them up for between them probably 12 points. I think with Dublin, there's still a lot of inconsistency. Costello could go for 10 points, he could go for 2. Con, again, he put up big scores early on in Championship. He hasn't put up those kind of scores against the better teams the last few games. So I think there's still question marks over the Dublin team. I think they're very poor in the semi-final, but equally Kerry were the same as well. So yeah. I think, look, on what I've seen, I would fancy Kerry, but I think, look, it's a 50-50 game, really.
Jeez, really endearing yourself to the Dubs fans here. I really appreciate the honesty there, Paul. I'm not sure. Do you agree with that? Do you think the two best players on the field will be Sean O'Shea and David Clifford?
Look, if you look at the two groups of players that are togging out, even including your subs, there's a great balance between the two. There's a lot of experience in both teams. There's a lot of miles on some fellas' clocks, Some of the clocks might have been a bit dodgy anyway as well. And then you have some youth coming through. You think Kerry on the back of last year, they'd want to put back-to-back All-Irelands, to talk of motivation, that, to stop Dublin, players getting 9 All-Ireland medals. I don't think that's going to be a call at all. If that is part of your motivation in the dressing room, you're probably way off the mark. You concentrate on what you want to achieve. And that last year wasn't a fluke. We deserve it, and this year, you want to go for it again. With Dublin, again, our feelings in the last couple of years, not being in finals and being beaten by a point, both days, whether it be Kerry or Mayo, and did we let games slip? That there's a chance that maybe something's been left behind, and there's been a great effort of bringing back the likes of Stephen and Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey. But then, the likes of Collie Basquel and Lee Gannon, there's a lot of time and effort put into them, a lot of patience, because Collie's around a while, and it's only now in the last, say, 12, maybe 14 months he's shown a bit of form. So, you take Kerry too, they've got fellas that are coming through and are very special footballers. So I think balanced out, and if you're putting a point system, I think to be very, very equal. And, I feel that Dublin, I think they played in sports the last day, and if Monaghan really thought about it, they could have beaten Dublin if they thought it, and it's the same with Derry beating Kerry. With those few minutes to go, if they really believed and they had a bit more legs, they may have just done that, but they didn't. Shows the true strength in both of these teams. So, as the previous, guys have said, it'll come down to those last few minutes, and it could be a big free kick from Cormac or bringing on Dean maybe to win the game for Dublin.
Yeah, I wonder will Cluxton shake the post if there's a free like coming for the the big thing last year, Seamus, was that Kerry couldn't beat Dublin. This Dublin team, they had it over you big time, and last year he got over that hump. Now there's an asterisk beside that because only 8 of that team will be starting on Sunday, and only one forward, Cormac Costello, started last year. They have a whole new forward line. All Con playing, Mannion back, all these different things. So, the psychological barrier has been broken. They're All-Ireland champions now. The inferiority should be gone. Are Kerry lads going to be half thinking, well, that wasn't the real Dublin?
Yeah, Colm, you've said a lot there. Look, last year, last year was massive for Kerry.
Pat me on the head there. While
But last year was huge, and I suppose you go all the way back to 2011, and 2011 was basically the creation of this massive Dublin wave. I was at the game, and to this day, I still felt we left that one after us. And look, we were totally in control for 60 minutes of that game. No different to Derry were 2 weeks ago with us, and a bit of naivety. Declan Sullivan getting concussed, a poor substitution. Before we knew it, Colin McMillan had the ball in the back of the net, and it was just chaos for the last few minutes. And, ultimately, 2.5 minutes, Cluxton came up, kicked a screamer. But what really disappointed Kerry people that day was McQuillan never gave Kerry the opportunity to go down the field and have one lash to draw the game. And that was extremely harsh, considering the whole 3 minutes of the time was spent on the last free kick, and that didn't sit well with anyone. So that's still sore. It's a sore, touchy subject. But since then, Dublin, 2013, super game. Absolutely ebbed and flowed. One of the high scoring, I think, semi-finals ever.
They were going to come Dublin, but that 11 really kick-started them.
100%, and they never looked back. Maybe one blip in between in 2014, Donegal caught them, and it was to our advantage. We won an All-Ireland in 2014, and we haven't. 2015-16 we showed up, but we were never going to win those. Dublin were dominant teams. 2019, I genuinely felt we had a massive opportunity in the drawing game to win the game. I was so confident I went up on the bus. I never go up on a bus. I always drive or go up, but I went up on a bus that day. I genuinely felt Dublin were under so much pressure to get over that, to get the 4 in a row and whatnot, and I think it did show on the first day, but the minute they showed so much steel and character that day. They were down a man, 14 men, and we were up a point with 5 minutes to go, and they just, any other team wouldn't have done it, but they got a point to drag themselves into a replay, and I just knew our chance was gone. We were never going to win the replay with the experience that Dublin had, and it proved by Dublin were controlled the replay that day. So, to be fair, since then, it was all Dublin. Dublin went on to win again in 2020, and last year it was a fantastic game. You mentioned the asterisk. Yes, there's a massive asterisk there, and I think from the Kerry players and from all of it, if we're going to beat Dublin, you'll have to beat Dublin with a full deck. Last year, Conor Callan was a huge loss, and when you consider that Cluxton wasn't involved, Jack McCaffrey, Paul Mannion, they're serious players. That's nearly a third of your team. So that has to be a huge, huge boost for Dublin. And if Kerry can win this one, well, I think they will definitely say, well, do you know what? You are worthy winners this year because you've beaten a full hand from Dublin.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's the Kerry motivation. They haven't beaten Dublin in a final since '85. You think the team that are All-Ireland champions shouldn't have the motivation. I think Kerry have nearly more motivation. But it seemed, Mark, like that, Dublin didn't win in 2021. Tyrone won it. That's all right. But then Kerry came and won it, and that pissed Dublin off. So they got on the phone and they got the boys back. I think Dublin were pissed off seeing Kerry, the up-and-coming team, and I think the lads maybe sitting at home just watching it, they wanted to come back. They're like, Jesus, we're not going to go 3 years.
I think as well, right, when you're kind of sitting at home, lads are getting older in that Dublin team, right? That's the reality. There's a lot of lads there that have been there probably, 8, 9, 10 years. And this is there is that motivation of probably a last real push, right, from this particular squad.
Are they putting all their chips into this year?
Like you mentioned it there, right? There's one forward from left, right? You know, Costello. Like, think about the change over there, right? The lads who are still in there from that core team are probably making their last push of this. And I think from that motivational point of view, they are probably putting everything into this one performance. You know, you probably would have written them off in the league at the start of the year. They've just improved game on game. The only game they probably went backwards was actually that semi-final. But look, I think from that point of view, I think, you know, Dublin do have the experience in this. They know what they're doing more so than those Kerry lads. And I think if it does go down to that last 20 minutes, that's where you could really see Dublin get a little bit of an edge, particularly if I think that Kilkenny's not starting and he comes in. I think that's where Dublin will have an edge, bringing someone like him in. Again, it all depends on who's fit and who's not.
Yeah. Kerry will think it's Christmas if Kilkenny doesn't start, Paul. This isn't a Dublin team, let's be honest, is it? Like, I mean, they very rarely pick the team that's going to start. It's a dummy team. It's the team that started the last day.
Yeah, like, is it mind games amongst management? You know, is it up to the opposition management to try and pick holes in it?
Just
like
on this note, just sorry to cut you off, because you were involved with Jim Gavin, you're involved with Desi. Like, when you see the opposition's team, you're not thinking that's the team, right? You're preparing for, like, is there any point of a dummy team is my point? Because you're preparing for everything, I presume.
I'd say any inter-county manager prepares for anything, you know.
So why did they do the dummy teams then?
Well, then let the GA make a law say you can't put in a dummy team, and it has to be what it is.
But why did they do it is my question. Because, like, who are you fooling, really?
Well, it's about testing yourself against the opposition. So if you want to test them and challenge them, that's what you're going to do. And, like, let the players go 15 on 15, but if you've got a challenge as well, is against the opposition management team, whether it's their selector or their trainers. So you're going to get them thinking. So same way, if we're playing a game and we're watching the bench and who's coming down off the bench, you know, you have in mind maybe who you're going to bring on to mark him. You know, like if a certain player is warming up and, you know, beforehand you've shifted the pieces, you looked at the bench, well, if he comes on, well, have we got someone on the pitch to mark him? Well, no, we don't. We need to bring someone in particularly for him. So you might have a player teed up. And then if you got the right player, as I know myself, we had a game, and I'm not saying who was against, and it was a certain player that we were fearful of and we needed them sorted. And we had a player picked on our bench, and every time the man went out to warm up, our man warmed up, and every time he went back up, our man went back up.
Tommy Walsh, Philly McMahon.
And then when that man was told you're going on, our man was on the pitch before he came on.
I think Eamon Fitzmaurice was the first I saw doing that, Seamus, that when McManaman came on, and he was probably the best impact sub that's ever been an impact sub, didn't faze him at all. Kerry used to warm up a sub to come on fresh. Not the first, it was about 16 maybe the first time I saw Fitzmaurice doing it.
Yeah, McManaman did an awful lot of damage done prior to 2016. Let me tell you that. We certainly hadn't that prepared in 2011 and other years. So, what an impact player McManaman
11 was the ref's fault. We've established that.
No, not the goal for the goal, but the referee's fault was the kick out. Nothing got to do with the goal. McManaman's goal was unbelievable. He just ran through and sliced through, and it was a brilliant goal. So, but no, he was, you know, I suppose it just showed the depth that Dublin had in what they had, and that continued through all those years. If you look at those finals, and there were some fantastic finals against Mayo, the depth and panel that Dublin had, and if you go back to all those games, it was I can remember one of the subs who came on for Dublin, I can't remember his name again, but he dived on a ball the very last kick of the game. What was it, Darren Daly? Yeah, and it was Mayo were down a point, and it was just a fantastic block. And you know, we all remember the massive scores and the Dean Rock kicks, and don't get me wrong, they were fantastic. But some people don't see those things, and to see a guy coming in off the bench and do what he did that day, and just dived on a ball that he had no right to block, and it was game over. Ball was blocked, Dublin won it, and the referee blew it over within 3 or 4 seconds. So the impact the subs have is unbelievable. And to be fair, if you were looking at both benches now, Dublin hold all the aces at the minute. Disappointed to hear that Tony Brosnan is out. I think he had a reoccurrence of a punctured lung and it's gone wrong, the poor man. He's a loss, albeit he hit the post the last day. He missed the big one, but he got on an awful lot of ball and he's very lively and energetic.
Spallan's back though.
Spallan is back, and he is a good guy, albeit he hasn't played football since May.
Better than Brosnan coming in.
He's more accurate and he'll get more scores, but he hasn't played football since May. And look, thankfully he's been involved, and you'd like to think that the quality of training is quite good inside, and he was probably he's probably on the possible team versus the A backs, so he was probably getting good grounding there over the last while. I think he's a good impact player, but if you look at the Dublin subs, it looks like that they'll hold Kilkenny. You've McCaffrey, Dean, but it's unbelievable the experience they have. That's going to be their trump card, and if it coming down the last 10 minutes like the last game, if they have those guys to come in, make an impact, that could be the difference. I hope it's not, but if you were a betting man, you'd have to say that Dublin have a stronger bench.
Yeah, I'd say we'd all agree Dublin have a stronger bench. Pat Gilroy, we're talking about Pat Gilroy, who's the boss or not. Mark, you've had your history with Pat Gilroy.
Short history.
Pretty much. Tell him about the GPS tracker with Gilroy.
We were playing up in Armagh. It was probably the first time we were really using them, and I must have had an argument with him. I'm pretty stubborn, so I decided that I was going to do as little as possible. I actually think I came off pitch. I think I had around 1-6, like unbelievable scoring. But we came in and partner at 9 kilometres. He looked at mine at 1.9 kilometres. Guys, I could have walked further. It was a 60-minute game. So that obviously started a downhill spiral with me and him.
Yeah, which culminated in a Cafe on Seine incident, didn't it?
Yeah, that was an unfortunate incident. It's just a miscommunication, in fairness. Now, we come in after All Ireland win year with Crokes and came in 3 months after. And look, it was meant to be a 3-week drinking rule. I think we were told it was 2 weeks, and we were playing Kerry, and I'd been injured anyway. I was still injured at the time, and out that night, and obviously the barman recognised me, texted his wife. He was out that night. He came in. I was ordering drinks. Literally stood up beside me, ducked down, ran out. Ring my friends. They go, where are you? They go, we're in Coppers. So I go up to Coppers, into Coppers for a night. And they're like, it mightn't have been Gilroy. I go, no, it was 100% Gilroy. They go, no, you're certain? I was like, no, he was talking to me. So we convinced ourselves it mightn't be. So around 6 a.m, we're heading home, and I got the phone call on the way home. Just here, don't bother coming out again.
That was it?
That was it, yeah.
And you never played for Dublin again after that?
Never, no.
Yeah. Because I don't think Jim Gavin would have been too fond of that stuff either, Paul, would they?
No. Over the generations, it's probably had been filled in. Curran said about lads going for a few points after training. It was a well-known thing, and with Pillar brought in Mark, and between themselves and Dermot Connolly on a training pitch, I've never seen players like these guys. They were phenomenal,
Instinctive players.
Just unbelievable, which I think is gone. When you talk about Morris Fitzgerald and things like that, I think it's gone nowadays. There's not so many instinctive, maybe. Mr. Clifford is up amongst them that could play in those generations.
I thought you were going to say me for a second, Paul.
But like the generation, I see it changing really. That our atmosphere in that group and that management team with the players, we tried to make them enjoy themselves as best we could, because that's all we knew at the time. As coaches into that.
Yeah.
That
but
scene.
isn't it sad that like a Mark Vaughan now that wouldn't be too fond of running, or Dara Conaja in this era wouldn't be considered because you wouldn't work hard enough? Are you not losing something there? Like, why do they all have to work like Paul Mannion? Like, you don't see Messi doing all that work. I know the pitch is smaller, but you get my point. Can you not carry one or two?
Mannion is probably a wrong pick, because Mannion just loves.
He's a freak, yeah. He's freakish. Yeah.
You don't have to force him to do it. He just loves that and gets those tackles in, and he knows how important it is. Some other guys don't. They just don't get it. They don't see it. They don't want to do it. But there has to be I feel there has to be a place for them, all right. You have to have that type of player that has that natural talent and ability. And, it wasn't that long ago, like question whether Bernard Brogue would even chase back and tackle and hassle, and he'd get your scores. And yet towards the end of his career, he started to introduce it now.
He kind of pretended to tackle Bernard.
He worked hard at pretending, and trying.
He was an expert pretender tackler, wasn't he? Bernard, there's no doubt. What about David Clifford? Because Clifford doesn't do all that work, and you don't want him to. Why do you want him to get tired tackling? You literally don't. And on the camera the whole time I was at the match, you see him, and he's dropping, defending half the pitch or what they all do, and then he go, right, the ball's past me, I'm heading this way, and Chris McCaig has a decision to make. And every time he headed back, because he had that respect. But why do you want David Clifford using an ounce of energy that's not in an attacking sense, Seamus?
Yeah, 100%. And but I suppose if you're doing that, and I was watching the game as well. Obviously, I was there, and David was kind of going out to the 45, and there was kind of an end point there where he said, "That's where I'm done," and he was going in. And I suppose that's a plot. I think Peter Canavan used to do that as well. Like when we used to play Tyrone, and Peter said, I'm not going back. I'm going to stay inside here, dangerous, inside in the inside line. And when you have a threat like that inside, you someone has to go back, and it's a great ploy. And funny enough, in the last 10 minutes of the game, David Clifford came out with 2 balls outside in the full back line. So he has that ability, and I've seen him with Fossa and with East Kerry minors and with East Kerry seniors. He has that DNA. He can do that, but we don't want him to do that. And I suppose the likes of the Dara Moynahans and the Adrian Spillans and the Stephen O'Briens, your Jack Barrys, all these guys, even Paul Gainey, he was sacrificing himself the last day, running well deep into his own at times, beyond his 22-yard line. So someone has to pay the price if you're leaving one guy up. But look, David is such a talent. I think you can afford to do that, and you want your key players up. And I think if the ball does break down, there is no point having everyone behind the ball. You need to look up and be able to have that ability to say, look, let's drive this ball in 50, 60 yards and have a go at it. And David gives you that option. So look, he's a special player, and but if he wants to do that game, he could. But we don't. Obviously, we want to see him inside on the edge of the square. That's where he's going to be most dangerous.
And the great thing about this game, Mark, is that there's going to be a bit of traditional shape on it. Like Fitzsimons and Davy Byrne will pair off. Fitzsimons probably with Clifford, and Davy Byrne maybe, and Sean O'Shea goes in, or whoever is in there, maybe Geaney. And they don't bomb forward like the Derry players or Tyrone players. They play traditional, and they go like an old school cornerback. And Jason Foley's the same. He doesn't head off up the field. We'll see some bit of shape, which I always like. The game will be a little bit stretched.
Yeah, I think you will to a certain extent. I think Fitzsimons seems to panic when he gets past his own 21, and he's kind of looking for the hand pass. But I still think, saying I mentioned earlier, I think the 2 Kerry lads are the best footballers. I think athleticism-wise, Dublin have it, right? And I still think they do, as much as they may have like a traditional shape, they still play a system of pass it around and set it up and runners through the middle, right? There is, where Kerry is a little bit more off the cuff, right? It's get the ball forward, get it into the best scorer, and just try and score. And I think, you look at wing backs, everything is just pushing forward, right? It's Thomas Sullivan. Anyone who can get forward will get forward to a certain extent. I think with Dublin there is a little bit more of a system in place. But I still think you will see more of a traditional shape. And the thing is, there's no point having Con in there if you're not going to deliver it in early, right? The whole reality is, like, if he gets the ball, he's one-on-one, he's gonna win it, and he's gonna score.
But it's criminal how they underuse him in there.
And
they never kick a kick out defensive.
That's my problem with Kilkenny playing, right? Is that, like, the minute you put him in there, it's going to slow down that whole game, right? As good as a player as he is, I think when he's come in the last few games, particularly when they've needed him, he's had a way more positive flow and moving that forward, getting it in, versus when he's starting, he has so many hand passes laterally, go backwards, collect the ball, pass it on to the next guy. The minute you start doing that against Kerry, you're going to slow it down because they are an attacking team. You need to hit them as quick as you can on the break.
Yeah, no, you definitely do, and he does slow it down, and I think that's why he's ended up getting dropped. Paul, here's a criticism I have of Dublin, and you've been in there a long number of years, Paul, is that they don't hit Fenton with kickouts. The opposition go out of their way to avoid Fenton because he's probably, I'd say, he's the best fetcher in the game. And yet when Dublin have a kick-out, it's only the last case scenario that they actually give the man a second kick-out, that they can get a good ball forward and a criminally underused Con, who's arguably the best ball-winning full forward in there. He might get 2 a game if he's very lucky. Explain to me why those 2 things happen.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's down to goalkeepers. It's opposition goalkeeper and it's our goalkeeper. opposition goalkeeper, you don't want to kick the ball to what you deem to be the best fielder, you know.
Yeah.
If anything,
So that part makes sense
if
to
anything,
me.
You pull them to one side. So on our kickouts, then the opposition defence would try and press, or would try and force the play to one side of the pitch, and it's opposite side of maybe where Brian is going, you know. And you know full well that on Sunday, Jack Barry is probably going to take up Brian. He's going to, you know, hassle him and pull him and drag him and the whole lot. And Brian is going to have to find a way of getting out of that bubble the two of them are going to be in, so he can get the field, so he can get the catch, because, you know, this man knows about fielding ball as good as anybody in any area of the pitch. You know, it does lift you nearly more so than getting that score, you know.
Yeah.
And Brian does need to get that.
Is it though that
right.
good and all as a fetcher he is, it's not a guaranteed possession, whereas the tap to the cornerback is a guaranteed, even though it might be 80 for him.
You're talking, I'm old school, I'm older than these guys.
Well,
I'm
will
old
you?
school, so I dislike short kickouts, but I appreciate what it's for and why it's done. You know, I prefer to be getting that ball out there. And I'd even say I hate the mark, you know, win it and got to land and get out of there and get the ball up the pitch. So
Would you have communicated this to Stephen Cluxton?
Through who? Like, you know, Stephen.
He decides the kickouts pretty much, isn't he? Like,
Again, you got to think about this. Stephen Cluxton will put the ball anywhere. Like, he's as good as anybody I've ever seen. Okay, off the tee, he'll put it down, and wherever someone goes, they go. So who decides? It's this chicken and egg situation. If someone runs into space and he could be the best player in your team, but he's covered, he's not going to get the ball. So it's about the player out the pitch getting into the space and the area of the pitch that he can get the ball comfortably. Now, if Stephen sees someone closing him down from behind, or he witnesses there's going to be a breaking ball, it's not going to happen. Okay? So that's invariably what happens. Your best fielders are going to be marked closely. They're going to be surrounded. There's going to be hunting in packs. And, you know, if you can get a break on the ball and go through someone and take a clip off him as well, that's double whammy, you know. He hasn't won the ball and I'm giving a bit of a dunt.
Yeah.
So, like, Stephen, you know, kicks to the fella that's in the best position.
But Stephen, like, would Jim Gavin go to Stephen, I want to see you kicking it out to a couple more contests? Or would Desi say it? It'd be out of question.
I would say let Stephen makes up his mind, like
right.
all goalkeepers. Like, I think.
But does the manager not tell?
I think managers are slightly wrong, you know, in enforcing themselves on a goalkeeping kick out, because there's so many moving parts. And is it after a score? Is it after a point? Is it after a goal? Is it after a free? Is it after a wide?
Yeah.
What's after happening? And then the players out the pitch that you really want them to hit, just as after being involved in a play for the last 30 seconds and is tired and can't make that run into that area. Yeah. You know, so it's very much the spur of the moment. I don't think you can plan it ahead as well as you think. So by saying, I want you to kick it long at certain times, it has to happen and the keeper has to see it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I suppose, and listen, it's very hard to give Stephen Cluxton goalkeeping advice because he's the greatest that's ever played the game. And in fairness to Kerry and Ryan, he's ice in his veins too when the pressure comes on. And the Dublin game last year was a big example of that. He got all his short ones away under severe pressure.
Yeah, 100%, and yeah, you're with Cluxton. Cluxton has set the bar, and it has been has changed the game, to be fair, since he's been in goal. And you know, the beauty of Cluxton is that if you push up on him, he can go long. The example of that was when Brian Howard caught a super ball, gave it off to Jack McCaffrey in the first game, and the ball in the back of the net. And Kerry were actually getting a little bit of traction by pushing up. And then, you know, like, I suppose the reason why Brian Fenton may not be catching a lot of balls, most teams, the majority of teams, can't push up on Dublin, so they sit back and they just give the kick. So players like Brian Fenton then are deprived the opportunity to catch the ball over their head. And look, we're all old school. We played back in the day, and Paul Curran mentioned there the game in 2000. There was zero sharp kick-outs, and like even in our time when Paddy was over the team, Declan Keefe had an absolute rocket of a kick. It'd go 70 yards, and like we used, even in 2000 when we were playing Armagh, they had O'Rourke standing. They had two men standing in front of Darragh Shea and Paul McGrain. So there was three men on Dara Shea for the kick out, and Paddy was saying, kick it out, pike it out, Declan, pike it out. And like we were saying, Jesus Christ, like Declan was brilliant at sharp kickouts. Like he was doing it with Rapmore all his life, and had a great knack with the two midfielders. And you know, we just said, Declan, fucking go short. And you know, you have to call this yourself. And Declan, within 3 or 4 kickouts, found Mike Hassett. Mike ran up one of them, gave a 1-2, kicked one ball over the bar, and he had set up 2 scores. And before we knew it, the 2 men were gone off Dara Shea, and then you go along. So you kind of have to call it as it is. But Cluxton, over the last 10 years, has that ability, because if you push up on him, he's going to go along, he's going to find the Howards, the guys beyond midfield, the guys who are making the runs. Might be Fenton, because you said he's going to get an awful lot of heat, but he's going to wait and he's going to find someone into that space, or if you push back, he's going to go short all day. So, to be fair, Shane Ryan in goals is really a super goalie. I've seen him. He's an unbelievable outfield player as well.
You saw him in
he
the
actually
club final,
he plays full forward for his club, Rapmore.
He was man of the match in the All-Ireland final.
He was, and we played with the divisional team with East Kerry. He played full forward when David Clifford was injured. So a serious outfield player. But he, as you said last year, some of the kickouts that he did were really, some of the sharp ones were dangerous. But he really knelt them. I think the last score we got was they all came in, they all converged, and he found Brian O'Begley on the break, and as a result got the ball to Paul Murphy, who kicked it in, and we got a free, obviously that free. So it's just so important now, the kickouts, you know, that because we won that kickout, we were able to win a free kick, which ultimately won the game for us. So next Sunday it's probably going to go down to small little inches like that, and it's going to be an amazing game. And I think the GA needs this, football needs it. I think over the last few years, hurling has taken over big time. What games like Limerick last week in the second half were amazing, and I think this could be an amazing game next Sunday. And
yeah, I think it will. There's no reason why it won't. Like, it's the biggest game that we could have in Gaelic football, and 2 teams that will go at it, I think. We'll get predictions off you lads before we finish up. Mark, I'm most interested in yours there, because I think...
I think Kerry, I think it's 50-50, right? I think either team, you can choose either team, and no one can really argue with you, right?
Case, yeah.
But I just think, I think on a footballing basis, I think Kerry are the better footballing team, but I think Dublin are a way more athletic team, right? So I think if it goes down to where, you know, it's a complete grog of a game, I think Dublin are going to have the edge. Typically a Dublin-Kerry game, though, they've always been actually, the last, you know, multiple games I can remember have been absolute thrillers, right? They've always been down to the wire, proper football contested. They've never been like games where you've kind of sat there going, you know, this terrible game. I think 2019, I remember going to the first game, the drawing game, and that was, I think, Clifford's first time playing against Dublin. And I remember sitting there going, like, how will he get on? Because I think everyone had thought at this stage he was probably the best you'd seen. First 7 minutes, he had 3 shots, terrible wides. Yeah. I mean, awful wides. He should have been gone. If that was 99% of people, you're getting whipped there, right? You're looking for that curly finger going, like, I'm coming off in the next few minutes. And the 4th shot was just outrageous, and he scores. And next thing, he just takes off. And I think that's, you know, that's why I kind of have this thing for Kerry, that they just have this footballing ability that they don't go away from. Where if I look at the opposite side of that, and I look at someone like, you know, going back to the Kilkenny point, but the reason he doesn't kick it in is, in my opinion, he has the ability, but he wants his stats to be like 100%, that I had no dispossessions, I didn't lose the ball, and I think that's where, in my opinion, that there's a problem, right? There's a fault in that, right? You have to take a little bit of risk, because by taking those risks and going over the top, and like taking on those risky passes, what you actually do is you push the defence back and you give the likes of Khan, anyone in that full forward line, the opportunity to have that 15 yards in front. If I know that ball isn't coming in as a full back, I'm just going to push out and I'm going to sit in front of that all day, knowing it's not going over me, and therefore I'm fully protected. And that's where I think Kerry will have the edge, is that they're unpredictable, right? Like you saw that Clifford last day, that ball in for that outrageous goal in the quarter-final, right? They're just off the cuff. And even the finish by O'Shea that day, right? 99% of people hit that ball when they're in. The one bounce, the composure, just to actually take it around and put it in. And I just believe on that basis, I just think they have the footballing ability. that if it comes and we think it's going to be a good game, I just think they may edge it.
Okay. Paul, what about you? And guess your prediction, and just quickly on the Dublin forward line, if that's going to be the forward line, there is 5 full forward, 5 lads whose best position is the full forward line playing in the forwards.
Yeah, I think that was named the last day as well. I have a feeling that Curran might start.
Instead of Scully?
Yeah, I think so. Like Scully was black carded the last day and he was gone by half time, and Curran came in with only like a couple of seconds left nearly. And I think Tyke Morley is a huge player to Kerry. He plays that +1, he's that experienced player. He doesn't need to be bombing up the pitch. And if a player was put in at centre half forward, that will draw him out. It doesn't help Kerry in their full back line. If they decide to drop someone back to take up Dublin's centre half forward, and he does get a chance, but then it's going to give an opportunity for someone else to come up the pitch. If it's Brian Howard that's gone to wing back, or it's James McCarthy that's gone to wing back, and half forward has dropped back to push in there, that gives them, chance, a bit of license to do it. I think midfield is going to be crucial, like we spoke about Jack and Fento. The other pairing is going to be mighty as well. Like O'Connor's playing brilliant football this year. A bit quiet the last day, got a black card as well. I don't think he has bad temperament. It was an unlucky sort of pull. If he's faced up with James McCarthy, he's going to have a handful, and James will have a handful too. If it's Brian Howard goes to midfield, again, another big challenge. I think Howard is playing absolutely brilliant football this year.
Howard's the +1, isn't he, for Dublin? He's kind of the one dropping.
He can be, but then so is Owen Merchant. He could easily do that too,
Merchant will be on Paddy. That'd be a fairly guaranteed matchup.
I don't know. I think Lee Gannon could be on Paddy.
Really?
I think that's my own thought.
Gannon would hate that. He likes kicking scores, Gannon does, rather than...
Yeah, he does. As much as Thomas Sullivan likes kicking scores, but then if he's told you've got to get back on Cormac Costello, So there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
The one person we haven't spoken about is a referee. I really, really hope it doesn't come down to a refereeing decision. I think last week we're so lucky in the hurling was because a referee just had a blinder of a game.
Yeah.
He was hardly seeing it. Whatever decisions he made were really good, and we got there. I hope a referee doesn't have, because I don't want to hear Seamus give out about it again.
Yeah.
A referee.
Well, that was it. Well, it's David Goff, and let's be honest, Kerry did a lot of whinging about Goff before the 19 final, didn't he? There was the big Crowley hit on McManaman that wasn't punished, and then there was talk that Goff's club is St Jude's and McManaman's there and they know each other, and then there was a 65 or a 45 that could have been McManaman appealed for, and it wasn't a 45 and he got it. But in fairness, Goff proved himself in 19 that Kerry don't have anything to worry about there. Like, he's a brilliant referee. What your prediction and your thoughts on Goff?
On the referee, no issues, and certainly no issues in 2016 either. No, the better team won. No. But my prediction, look, obviously, I'm delighted to be sitting here on the couch tonight, and we're going to win the vote here tonight, 2-1 for Kerry. I didn't see that one coming with two Dublin people here. And so I'll drive down. I'll drive down
I'm
happy
wondering
tonight.
For the penalties, we put Mark playing for Kerry. I think Mark might.
Yeah. But it's look. I think Paul alluded to it already. I think this is just impossible to call. Obviously, my heart is saying Kerry. It's a 2-horse race. It can happen. We have the marquee forward in David Clifford. He's playing brilliant football. Will David Clifford win it by himself? Absolutely not. He will need to get support from the likes of the Paul Gainey's, from the Paddy Cliffords, from Darragh Moynihan, from Stephen O'Brien. They have to chip in. They have to contribute on the scoring board. I think already listening to a lot of people are saying, look, even if David Clifford gets 8 points and Sean O'Shea gets 5 or even 6 or 7, that's 15 points. Dublin are still very, very confident in saying, look, even if Kerry get that amount of score, 15 points, we're going to beat them. And I think Dublin are confident if it goes to a shootout with their 6 forwards versus our 6 backs, they're going to come up on tops, coupled with the fact that they have a stronger bench. So they will be my concerns. If it does go out to a shootout at the end, we could be in trouble. But we have a chance if David Clifford gets support from the other forwards, the Darragh Moynans, these guys, no doubt they have to work extremely hard, but they have to be a threat on the scoreboard. They have to chip in with a point or a goal. And Stephen, to be fair to the man, has come back. No goal has passed him since, and it's a fair achievement for a 41-year-old, and hats off to the guy. And this won't phase him in any shape or form next Sunday. It's just a normal game. So Stephen Cluxton is like going out playing with the club. But Kerry do have to hit the net the next day. They have to hit the net. I think if Kerry are to win, they may need a goal, if not possibly 2.
Yeah. They probably will. Right, so we have 2 Kerry and we have 1 Dublin.
I tell you one, actually, the last penalty I got against Kerry, I actually missed. Do you remember that, Clarke, in 05? I got a penalty. It was the first time we had a chance of beating Kerry and Turles in 25 years. It was around 2 minutes left, and I got lad shouting at me, "Pillar wants you." So I look over and he goes, "Take a point," and I gave him the thumbs up. So I go over and I go, if I put it high enough, he won't know. And I hit this, and I couldn't hit it any better, right? It's going in top corner. Unbelievable save, puts it wide. I was like, oh God. And I could hear him straight away, the 45, absolutely scuff it, of course. So we end up getting out of there with, I think we drew, or we got out of there, we might have lost.
So it was a draw match. You had a penalty. You were told to tap it over the bar.
I was told to tap it over, yeah, to try and get the win. And then I had to sit in another carriage by myself on the way home.
Not on the way home, I think. The back.
Jeez. Mark Vaughan should have played a bit longer, shouldn't he?
I think I marked Moynihan in my very first game.
Did you?
That was, yeah, and I didn't know who you
Well,
were.
you would have gone.
That was
Who?
Do you remember that, Seamus?
Yeah, I think it was Killarney, Mark.
He must have been a very good player. He kept me to 4 points.
From play?
I'd say, oh, yeah, I wasn't on the freeze. I think Mossy was playing at the time.
4 from play off you, Seamus.
I can't recall that, no.
Yeah, you were too
Tomas
old.
Any other ones, Mark? Any other anecdotes? Penalty misses?
No, I've lost to Kerry now. The only ever game I played
That
was
was
probably 07 semi-final. I pretty much cost Dublin the game. I think I might have had a very, very bad game that day. Had a great season and then just probably had a few chances. Missed pretty much the only free I missed all year. In front of the post, ran 21-8 and hooked it and missed a goal chance. But look, that was they were the better team. And then I got lucky in 09. Gilroy threw me off. We lost by 25 points around 2 weeks later. I think one of you guys said it was the highest scoring semi-final. I think 09 was the highest scoring. Kerry at around 525. No, there's not many games against Kerry, really. I think a few league games, only 1 championship game.
That was it. I think we could do a show, just me and Mark. Mark could be lying on the couch. All right. That's all we have time for part 2. Give it up for Seamus Moynihan, Paul Clarke and Mark Vaughan. Welcome back, everyone, to Smaller Fish, the football show. We're live in Liberty Hall. We're in association with Benetti Menswear, one of Ireland's leading menswear brands. You can go to benetti.ie for a full range of their clothing, so it's great to have them on board. Right, we're going to finish off with a penalty shootout. Holy shit. What a brilliant start. Tomas O'Se's done a legger as well, so this has gone really, really well. My pint is gone. Okay, so we have a couple of substitutions on the Kerry team. Do I have a microphone there? Don't have a microphone. This is Cahill. I don't have a microphone to talk to him. Cahill's from Fermanagh, would you believe? But he's filling in tonight with the Kingdom. And this is Seamus Moynihan's son. Look at the size of him. He's only 17. Your name is? Right. Jamie Moynihan. Keep your eye out for Jamie. You will definitely spot him. There's no doubt about that. Right, can you nominate a captain? Seamus Moynihan and Paul Curran, captains. Come over here and we'll take a toss to see who goes first. This is fairly important. You're defending champion, so you can go first, Seamus. Heads. Yeah. Is that heads? Yeah, heads it is. Heads it is. Do you want to go first or second, Seamus? We'll go second. So. Go second. All right. So the Dubs are up first. I'm in goals, by the way. So Dubs, you have 10 seconds to organise your kickers. You're all taking one. Mark Vaughan first. Okay, here we go. Mark, hang on a second. Mark Vaughan talked a good game. Okay, Mark, first. Come on, Mark. Seamus Moynihan up next. Dublin are 0 for 1. Anyone listening on the podcast, I saved Mark Vaughan's top corner shot. Seamus Moynihan. That's a soccer ball. Ooh. What a penalty. And I guessed right. Jesus, there was no stopping that. Yeah. This is over 50s box here, Paul. Okay, Paul Curran, Carrier 1, Dubliner 0. Seamus Moynihan absolutely buried it. You're very easy to read, you Dublin lads. Anyone on the podcast? I've saved another Dublin penalty. Okay, Cahill. No pressure, Cahill, but leash beat for Mana this year, right? So, okay, Cahill. Geez, if I had a kick out, I wouldn't be bad, wouldn't it? Okay, Paul Clarke. Paul Clarke, you need this or you're out. Paul Clarke has to score this or Kerry win the penalty shootout by only scoring one. We'll give you it just to rattle it off. So there you have it. Kerry 2, Dublin 0. Kerry are going to win on Sunday. I wonder would Tomas O'Se have scored? Probably, who knows now? He's not here. Right, listen, that's all we have time for. Thanks very much for coming. Thanks to all of the team, which is myself and Itzy. Thanks to everybody on the camera. Thanks to all the guests for coming. And thanks to Benetti Menswear. Without them, none of us would be here tonight and for their support. Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.